Okay. Chad?
I agree. I think the signage on the adjacent storefront came out tasteful, and while it continues the same kind of lettering and style, so I support it.
Okay, Deborah?
Oh, sorry, I think it looks good.
Okay. I agree. I think it's nicely done. We talked about getting the spacers, and that I think that worked out well on the other sign. This will be a nice sign. If there are no other comments, I would. Oh, by the way, Deborah, I sent you an email asking you to second the motions tonight. Can you do that?
I didn't see that. Okay.
Oh, okay. So I would take a motion to approve the sign as submitted.
Point of clarification, Mr.
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry that
Yeah.
that we changed, that we note that there is a black acrylic letters. It says black underneath the description under the sign, so it's got a mix of both. So
Okay. Well, I will make that motion with that note.
okay, so with the note that it's black
Yes.
on the side description. Okay,
Second,
and we vote. Bob,
Yes, in favor.
Len,
In favor.
Susan. Susan, you're muted. Oh, where'd she go?
she's there, she's still muted.
Susan, can you approve?
Sorry, yes, in favor.
Chad,
Yes, in favor.
Deborah,
Yes,
and the chair approves. All right, thank you for coming in.
Thank you all.
The next item is 377 Chestnut, Roche Brothers. I'm going to take a moment to, I'm not sure the applicant, how clear the applicant was on sort of what the process is here, but basically the design review board reviews facade changes in the business districts. So that's one of our duties tonight, is to do a facade review, and that's it's an isolated item in the different bylaws. The second thing is this project is being reviewed by the Zoning Board of Appeals. It is not being presented to the planning board by the applicant. They may be reviewing it and commenting, but I was asked by the ZBA staff person to send a memo back to the ZBA, similar to what we do if it was a site plan review process, just so they get some sense of it. We will actually approve in some fashion the facade changes. And the last thing is they did include signage and applications for signage. However, basically the bylaw for your address allows one 32 square foot sign. So to do so what I think I'd like to do is have a discussion with you of the signage and get some input from the board, and then have you apply for our special permits for the extra signs, which is not really that difficult process. And Elisa can help you if you contact her about that. But so that's sort of the way I'd like to go through the review tonight. So I will turn it over to you you can take the screen if you want, present the building design. We'd like to see the site plan walk through with us, and planting and lighting, so that we can give some feedback to the ZBA.
Okay. Does everyone have the submission package?
Yes, I think so.
Yes,
So I can walk through that now. Which part we've got many applications in. I understand on the signage. We've got the
Yes.
application in for the facade. We do that first and then look at the site second.
Yeah, why don't we just do the building facade and then we'll do the site.
Okay. What we've done on the building facade is it will be a completely new facade that'll replace all of the masonry, replace the storefront glazing and any of the materials there. The building itself will be closed during the construction period. So therefore, it's going to be gutted and reconstructed except for the building envelope itself and excluding the front wall, which will be taken down and then rebuilt. There is a second floor mezzanine, if you might call it that, On the left side, where we get a little bit of vertical, that actually is presenting the entrance from the street and the parking lot. And that is not new area. Basically, it's replacing a very obsolete, if I don't call it illegal, mezzanine on the back of the store. And we're actually constructing less square footage to the new one that exists from the existing one. As far as the design of the facades, it is a branding statement that Roach Brothers looks to make, where they're trying to get a consistent look through their stores throughout the chain. And they modify it to the size, the scale, and of course to the site itself. So this one, even though similar to other facades that they will be doing or have done, what they've done is very warm, natural colors. They've used very sound statements in terms of the contrast. And I think as far as the presence, have an overall balance for the storefront. The building itself on the two, say the other three sides, there is a articulated brick that is existing since the building was built, that is to remain on the left side facing the building. The right side is nothing but concrete block that'll be painted a relatively dark color, which was submitted on the color board just to fade it away. We are actually 2 feet from the property line on the existing plan. I can respond to any questions or anything we can look at.
Okay.
There
Yeah, why
was
don't
a submission of the materials. I realize it's a photograph and not as real as it could be, but it is the materials that we will use.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you. That's very useful.
There is a rendering also as part of the packet, which shows a little bit more of their realistic approach to it.
So you really, I guess, just to keep orient, I mean, everybody here is familiar with the store. You're sort of rotating the main entrance to the front, the street facing wall now off as opposed to the
Correct.
outside parking lot.
Correct.
Okay,
And that's somewhat in sync with what we're doing with the site when we get into that as well.
okay. Okay, start with the questions. Deborah?
Just starting to look at it. If somebody else wants to go first.
Okay. Chad, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I think just putting aside for the moment the signage, which I know we'll talk about in a bit, I think overall it's tasteful, it's well done. I like the move away from the sort of fake residential mansard roof. Definitely modernizes the look of the building. So I think, you know, all in all, it looks like it's well done.
Okay, Len?
I would agree with Chad that it's very well done, very neat, very legible, and a huge upgrade to that storefront, to that side of the street, everything. So I'm fully in favor. No objections here.
Susan?
I'm just agreeing with what everybody says. I think it looks nice and is much better than what's been there.
Okay.
I
Bob?
like the new orientation as well.
Yeah. Okay. Bob?
Yes, thanks for the presentation. Yes, definitely an improvement. A couple of quick questions. The height of the proposed building, how does it compare with the existing one?
It's very relative. The building itself is 26 feet in height, plus there's a screening element above that, the louvers, which is another 30 inches. So
Okay.
overall, it's about 28 and a half feet with the allowable 35-foot ability.
And how tall is the existing building?
The existing building up, I'm going by an old drawing, and with the ridge of the highest point, we're about 28 feet as well.
Okay, so it's similar, as you said.
Very similar in height.
And the screening is for mechanical equipment up there?
There is some HVAC equipment up on that roof, but it was
Okay.
also part of a design element, so we get away from that very flat appearance.
Good, thank you. And then the long running band that has three or the rods coming down to support the canopy. What's the gray material near the top, and then below there appears to be a sort of a grill, or it looks like a grill. It's much
Yes.
darker.
Yeah, the gray material is a hardy plank. It is a shiplap material, not a clapboard. It's a shiplap material, which is applied. The grill you're referring to actually is in sync with the screen at the top of the tower. So
Okay,
that's still, it's a dark Duronotic material. It's a metallic material. And
but
that
it's
is, that's solid back. It's a
right,
fake.
right. Yeah, okay. And then the awning or the canopy, is that solid? If you'd look up from the sidewalk, you'd see a solid surface.
You're looking at a wood plank. It's actually would imitate a 2 tongue and groove, 2-inch
Right.
tongue and groove material.
Okay. That's all good, thanks. That's helpful. And then I guess we could ask now, perhaps, will there be lights in that awning?
Yes, there is. Yeah,
Okay.
downlights only with cutoffs. Yeah.
Right, okay. No, I agree with some of the earlier comments, but thank you for the clarification on some of the materials there. That's it for now, Mark.
Okay, Deborah?
So my only question is, so all of the glazing that's rendered in the black and white as glass, and then in the colored rendering, it's this blue-green color. Is that, what is that? Is
That's
that
just
clear
a
glass?
privilege. It is clear glass, yes.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I just wanted to ask a little more. Is there, we'll go through the site lighting when you do the land, when we look at your site plan, but is there any other lighting on the building that you're gonna have?
There is some lighting on the building. It is new lighting. It is cut off screening, so you get no direct light source. And that really is to light up at the emergency exits, and of course, to add on to the site lighting.
Okay, so but there's not, for instance, a light above the left-hand tower portion above?
No,
the
not at
approach
all.
for the
No.
center? Okay.
No,
So it's really just along the front, it's really under the canopy.
correct,
Okay,
correct.
and then the windows. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? Right, so I would take a motion to approve the facade changes as submitted.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and we come to the vote. Bob Dermody,
Yes.
sorry, lost my list again. Lynn Karen,
In favor.
Susan Opton,
Yes, approved.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson,
Approved.
and the chair approves. Okay, so do you want to? Actually, if you could, no, I don't know. We all have the copies. If you want to screen share the site plan, then you can kind of point things out as you go through it. You don't
I
have
was
to.
not prepared to screen share.
Okay. Okay, well, then we'll just look. Why don't you tell us what you're doing? And we'll kind of look at our own pieces here.
Mark, one of us could put it up and he could talk through it.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, I don't have it on the laptop. I have it on my desktop.
You want me to try?
Yeah, why don't you throw it up?
Let's see if that works.
There you go.
Nice.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah, yes.
All right, thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
I think to present this, the biggest thing is, and I've also submitted from Stantec, Rick Bryant, who is a traffic engineer, PE, a study of this, just indicating the improvements that were done. And I think some of the big things he pointed out was the safety. Right now, there's 3 curb cuts onto Chestnut Street, where you actually traverse through the parking lot by coming out onto Chestnut and then back into the parking lot, the way the parking is laid out. What we have done is created and reduced it down to 1 common curb cut to bring everything in and off the site. And we've reconfigured the front where you actually drive in, loop around, park, and then go back into the rear lot if need be, if there is no spaces to the front. With that being said, the parking count is almost identical to what we had, and then both of them surpass what is required currently by the town regulations. We've also added a pedestrian walk path from Chestnut Street back to where the new entrance is on that front corner. And we've also added quite a bit of green area. In fact, we're probably about 6 times what exists on the site now. And as far as pervious, we've increased it somewhat, but we're still pretty much 100% non-pervious to the site. We have entertained going into, or we have shown and will be shown to the ZBA, where we're taking all of the roof drainage and going into a subsurface tanking and doing recharge on site with the roof drainage. And that was one they suggested, and I worked with the town engineer, Mr. Ryan, to do that, to achieve that. Site lighting is being replaced throughout. We've got 25-foot height of the fixturing, which is a 3-foot base and a 22-foot pole. And they're all spaced into as much of the interior as we can. And there has been submitted to the ZBA, the photometrics of it, where we have 100% cutoff at the property line. And that foregoes and is also on the building lighting that you asked about a little bit earlier on. That's all cut off at the property line. And there's no direct surface brightness of the fixturing. We've added a bike rack in. We do have the accessibility parking, or the accessible parking in a relative area to the storefront into the Redemption side. And I think that's probably sums up what we're looking to do there. The rear receiving, the side receiving in the back, all remains the same. We have gone through all of the vehicular traffic routing and turning radius, and particularly for the fire engines, we've given them complete access and maneuverability. And the fire chief has reviewed this through the ZBA, and his comments come back favorable. He's all on board with it. And we've done that with also the truck traffic coming in, how they're maneuvering the site and coming in to the side where the existing dock is, which the store's been doing for years and years. And also any of the straight box trucks are going to the rear of the building. Produce, chips, bread, that type of thing will come to the rear of the building where they have a receiving area and they can maneuver back there. Any questions I might add to that?
Yes, we'll talk through. I just want to have a general one. There's one island that's noted landscape island typical. Are all of the islands going to be landscape in some way, except the one, I assume the striped ones near the loading dock?
Yes, and that's because of the some of the trucks will maneuver over that island.
Okay.
We'll say the less experienced driver will maneuver over that. So we are expecting that to take place and preventing any damage to any of the islands. The others are landscape, and there has been a landscape plan submitted to ZBA for that, and a planting schedule.
Oh, yeah, well, that's kind of what we would have liked to have seen, but we'll have to note that we typically do review that with our site plan review. I think at the least, I'd ask you to just send that to us.
I can do that.
So we can get it in our record.
I can do that, and
we'll make we'll comment to the when we comment to the ZBA, we'll note that we weren't able to look at the detail there. But I'm sure some questions in general may come up about it as we go through. So I will let let the team
If we
start.
are fortunate enough to get somewhat of an approval on the site plan, we can certainly commit that whatever changes or whatever you make for the landscaping, we can adhere to and make change to.
All right, thank you. So Chad, any questions, comments?
I think that my first observation, and this is really kind of coming more from having been there and used the parking lot multiple times myself, is I've no doubt that narrowing the curb cut to one ingress and one exit is safer in eliminating them. But just from the standpoint of all the cars in there, it seems to me like it's going to be a fairly congested kind of traffic pattern and circulation of people coming in and out. So I'm sure traffic modeling has been done, but it surprises me a little bit that it's all been narrowed down to just the one curb cut. Typically, this is also just kind of an observation that there's two accessible parking spaces that are located kind of up and around the corner on the left-hand side from the entrance. And I think typically you'd like to have accessible parking able to transfer straight onto some kind of a walkway. And so it looks like for the one that's further away from the entrance, the accessible parking will come out, be able to exit the car along the striped area, but then they're going through the parking lot driving area to get back to the entrance. As opposed to being able to
There
go
is a
straight onto the
sidewalk on
sidewalk.
that side. Yeah, there is a sidewalk on that side of the vestibule, directly from
Yeah.
the accessible spaces walking down to the front entrance.
No, there's the one that there's no sidewalk. That it's the two parking spaces that are almost kind of at the dead center of the plan.
Yeah.
One of them is right adjacent to what's labeled as a flush walk, but yeah, the other one that the cursor was just almost pointing to there.
The back window.
The person using that will have to maneuver through the vehicle drive area in order to get back up to a sidewalk. I'm not sure exactly how you would modify the layout to not require that, but I think that's typically what you try to do. I
could explore possibly taking that second accessible space and bringing that to one of the diagonal spaces directly in front at the walkway, at the pedestrian walkway. So I'll still maintain the two, which I'm required to have. One would be the one accessible to the sidewalk. The other one would be coming around the front where they would have better accessibility to the pedestrian walk coming off of Chestnut Street. If that answers your concern, I can certainly make that happen.
Might be worth exploring, yeah. And otherwise, I agree with what Mark was saying. It's a little hard to comment on the landscaping or what's labeled as a Cape Cod berm without a little bit more information about them. It's an awful lot of impervious space, and so if your parking is in excess of what you're required, it might be worth considering whether you could give any of the parking over to some pervious areas, maybe a bit of additional landscaping.
When I say we're exceeding what is required, that's certainly not what the store is needing. The store is a very busy, active store, and every space is essential. And I would be hesitant to really take any of the parking out of this. Might be added in to note at this point too, that Roach Brothers does lease space from the VFW for their employee parking. There's additional spaces over there that's not part of this discussion, but I just wanted to bring that up. And I think if anyone's been to the store, it's pretty busy and full for a fair amount of the time that you would go.
Yeah. I think, I guess just the other thing is typically when there is site lighting, the photometric plan is submitted just so we can see the light levels and that there's not light spilling out into adjacent properties and things. And we don't have that information available to us.
I can certainly forward that to you with the landscape. I think when, maybe that's my own misunderstanding, but I was under the impression this was kind of a auxiliary review of this. And the ZBA had the true review, and only the layout for consideration was to be considered. But I've got no problem
Yeah.
submitting those other plans to you.
Yeah,
And then I
that's
guess just
fine. That
the
was-
last,
yeah. Go ahead, Chad.
I'm interpreting this, a whole bunch of hatch mark lines right near the entrance into the parking area leading up towards the front door. Is that intended to suggest a pedestrian area?
That's a combination of painted and stamped concrete, or stamped bituminous, I should say, as a
it's not-
pedestrian walkway coming in. It's a 4-foot
No,
wide
but
walkway.
Right, but there's no real curb or any barrier between that and the vehicles that are driving
is
in the same
none.
area.
No, there is not.
Yeah, I guess just generally it looks very tight, and a lot of things are kind of competing for the same space. But I'm definitely not a traffic engineer.
I did submit the letter from Stantec. I don't know if that's it is in the file somewhere.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah.
have it.
I thought the comments were very real as far as correcting some of the inadequacies of the existing parking lot.
Yeah.
And also playing the safety card. I think there's a lot of safety aspects that's improved with what we have done versus what exists.
Yeah. I would expect for the most part that the pace of traffic will be slow in there because of the level of activity. So I understand
It's
Chad's
also good. It's
concern
also
with
good to
that.
point out that the queuing is more than what exists now in 3 areaways. If you were to take clear queuing for exiting or entering, the queuing coming in and off site is more than what actually exists now with the 3 curb cuts.
No, I have no doubt there'll be more queuing coming out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Len, do you have any comments, questions?
Sorry, nothing on my end. I'm okay.
Okay, Susan?
I had mostly the same comments as Chad. I won't repeat them, but there's 1 or 2 parking spots that seem either impossible to get into or dangerous when they're pulling out, that they would be, I mean, I'm sure safety has all been sorted out, but if I was in one of those parking spots, I feel like I'd worry about hitting a pedestrian coming across that walk there. It looks, and I'm not even sure how you get into that spot.
Talking about the one by the bike racks or the future pickup lockers?
No, I'm talking
over
about
there.
the one on Chestnut Street that's right by the entrance. More over, right next to the walkway. That is a parking spot, isn't it? Or is that
Yes, it
something
is.
else?
Yes.
Not there,
The
By the
Chestnut
guard.
by the street, Bob.
by the
It
guardrail.
heads into Chestnut Street, I believe.
Yeah, right there. If you, I don't know how you get in that spot. And if you do get in it, it looks like when you back out, you're backing right into the walkway.
This one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody's looked at that, but that looks scary to me.
Yeah.
My other comments would be, being a landscape person, it's kind of not a pleasant parking lot to look at currently, so I'm sure it's going to be more organized and traffic flow easier to get around, but the more landscaping that you add, I think it would enhance the building, the entrance, and the whole lot. If you could, I know you're not willing to give away parking spots, so landscape space is always competing with parking spots.
The landscape, without having the ratio in front of me, I believe it's about 4 to 5 times more than what exists there now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is nothing. So.
So
it's
could you
much
give us
better.
could you give us an explanation of like the typical planting scheme, say the islands at the end of that angled row of parking? Is there going to be trees in there and ground cover? Is it just going to be
Each,
bushes?
each
Is it-
of the
what's
area
the
that
approach?
doesn't have a light pole will have a tree. And then there's a combination of ground covers, decorative grasses, and your typical variety of hardy plants that would last in the.
Okay, and if there is a light pole, then what's the kind of the concept?
That would be everything but the tree. It would stay.
Okay.
That would be the vertical element, and everything else around it would be lower shrubs and grasses.
Okay. So really just trees at Chestnut Street and that the property to the left.
Yes.
Okay. Go.
I think we all have to accept that it's an extremely tight, populated site.
Yeah. Bob?
Yes, thanks, Mark. I've got concern about the space right in front of the future pickup lockers. If there's a car in that space and they need to get in or out, open their door, maybe the future locker item could be closer to the building. Maybe that's just a placeholder, but that's a spot I have a concern. It's always hard to get a car in and out of a spot that's tight along a curb.
That is strictly as a future element. And quite honestly, I didn't have the size or anything. The ones I've seen out there, some of them much more shallow than what this is, and will go hard onto the building. That was, you're right, a placeholder, because a decision is not reached whether or not that will be in play.
Yeah, that's just even if it is up against the, you need space, you probably may have a shopping cart or something. With the juxtaposition of a car in that spot could be problematic. Yeah, I echo some of Chad's comments in general. The one exit entrance, yes, maybe that's an improvement certainly, but I see queuing these 3 spaces along the left side. Those, that could be tough for them to wait to back out if there's queuing past them. Yes, I agree it is a tight site, but that's just one thing I'd be concerned about. And then a quick clarification on the islands that are striped. Are those painted striped islands or are they curbed?
They would be a little bit elevated, if you might, not so much as a Cape Cod berm, but more or less a stamped bituminous. So you get a little bit texture to it, so people would try to avoid them, but they wouldn't be damaged if a tractor trailer rolled its rear wheels over them.
Right, which I can see would be good to have that space. And then lastly, does the building footprint change at all, especially in that front corner where the new entrance is going to be?
The only thing that changes if you I'm trying to say on the I did include a fixture plan inside, but the 2 diagonal corners are cut off of that front at that vestibule, and we have squared those off. So I think it's around 36 square feet additional to the footprint of the building.
In which direction?
If you can picture that vestibule on the site that we're looking at, with the two front corners diagonally cut off.
Right
at
here.
45, we've squared them off, come out forward 4 foot and to the side 4 feet.
Right there?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Both sides, where you've got the red circles there, yes.
Yeah. All right.
Now the footprint is diagonally cut off.
Okay. I think that's it for now, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, Deborah?
Back to the accessibility issue that Chad brought up, and the 2 spaces you have, and the option of, you're talking about maybe looking at those diagonal ones. I think you just need to be aware of the letter of the requirement of the MAAB. I've got it open now, about the requirements for the access aisle, that it does have to be immediately adjacent to the space without somebody walking into the drive aisle to get to it.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And it does have to be 5 foot wide, and just that whole section in the MAB. needs to comply with the letter of that.
It would absolutely need to be, yes.
So there's no sort of stall space for the shopping carts like you see in some parking lots at supermarkets.
None were indicated on this, no. Roach Brothers would typically have staff gather the carts, bring them back inside, or bring them along the front of the building.
Well, don't they typically wheel the cart out for you and unload your car?
They
haven't
do that,
stopped
yeah,
doing
they
that.
do that, and then the employee pushes the cart back in, yes.
Okay.
There is cart storage within that vestibule.
Okay. I'm concerned about
So-
speaking of some of these spaces, I would hate to park in. I'm looking at the far left corner, that acute corner where you've got, yeah, where somebody's gonna park in the one kind of facing down, and then a big SUV is gonna park in the one catty corner to them, and the one person wouldn't be able to get out. Is that, I've never seen anything like that, but I guess people will learn.
My guess is that those will be the spots that people only desperately use at Thanksgiving. So, but
Unless
yeah,
they're covered with snow.
We are allowed to have a certain amount of compact cars. We could sign that for a compact car as well.
well, we'll just note, in our comments to the ZBA that there are some difficult spots, and we understand your reluctance to give up any in a busy location, but deletion of a couple might benefit the rest of the layout a little bit.
I
I am
have
guessing
one
right
extra-
now that I will be giving up one to make that accessible space in that front diagonal location to satisfy what I need to for the accessibility board.
Anything else, Deborah?
So are you going for a variance for not meeting the landscape requirement in the parking?
We're going for the special permit to allow that, yes.
Okay. All right.
Mark, I know I already provide comment, but I'm coming back to that pedestrian thing that's really just striping. It seems to me that if safety is part of the goal, that getting rid of those two diagonal spaces that Susan was talking about earlier, and shifting that and actually making a real proper walkway from the street back up to the building curb, where there is some kind of a separation through a curb or something a bit more defined would be safer. I mean, it just seems like people walking with their back on just painted stripes with incoming cars right behind them. It seems like it's not as safe a solution as it could be. And originally I was trying to think, do you put a sidewalk way over on the right hand side and you slide everything to the left? But I think you will have people potentially walking over from the junction station, and not everybody necessarily going to be coming from the downtown area. So I think a more defined pedestrian walk that gives them some actual separation from the incoming vehicles would be a safer solution.
So you think kind of put it in the island and then curb cut each end of the island, but it's a painted thing when it's in the drive, and then beyond that, it could have a little more protection physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But an actual walkway and not just, painted stripes in basically the same space as incoming vehicles.
Okay. All right. Well, they covered, I think, most of the comments pretty well. I think I picture in my mind the Sudbury Farms parking lot, which is probably bigger than this one, having one entrance except for the little getaway in the back that people in the know might use occasionally. And that works well. And that that location also has no parking up against the building, so that they have a similar issue with the handicap spaces. But as Deborah pointed out, there are regulations about that. I don't believe that they tell you you can't cross a driving lane, but they do want you to get close to the doors so that, or close to a walkway that keeps them out of the traffic. So if you could, you might want to take a little bit closer look at that, as we've mentioned. My only other issue, and he did say, well, we'll have to take him at his word that there is no, Deborah, he did mention there's no light spill. They did do a photometric, and it does not, there's no light spilling from the site. But my preference is always to use in a slow speed urban, suburban setting like this. The smaller the light posts we can use, the better. So if anything works with something shorter than 25 feet, that would be great to see too. Something a little more scaled to the pace and scale of the pedestrians and the slower moving cars. That would be my only additional comment.
The only thing in doing many of these, that would do is to increase the number of poles.
Okay,
That would impact more on the layout as well.
okay. I just wanted to get it out
25
there.
foot in a common shopping center today is relatively low, so
Yeah,
go exorbitant on height. But we did run the photometrics to show an even light
okay,
and the cutoff ability.
okay, good. So I will sort of prepare a memo with these comments and get it to the ZBA. It was a pretty tight window. I think they're meeting Thursday, so
We are meeting Thursday.
something
yes.
back in. So the next thing, what we'd like to do is just give you some feedback on the signage.
Yes,
And then you can put together a sign package, go to the, and apply for a special permit.
let me
And-
just change positions and grab that plan. Okay.
just trying to-
And as I mentioned earlier on, this is all part of the Roach Brothers branding. It's all part of trying to be consistent with what they're doing throughout their chain of stores. And what they've done is taken a lot of emphasis on the oversized sign. Like right now, currently, you're approximately 150 square foot of signage with the Roach Brothers on the front of the existing. And I did include in the package an existing photo of the store, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. So that's about 150 square foot. Our overall sign, the main sign itself, which is the Roach Brothers and the logo, is about 71 square foot in total. And then the Chestnut Street and the Redemption, and I'm not sure if the Redemption is not a directional sign or not in the way it would be viewed. But anyways, I gave that. That's 117 square feet. The other one's 13 square feet. And the only difference then would be on where the two logos are actually stenciled onto the brick in a very low-key black faded stencil effect.
Okay,
That equals a lot of what the square footage is. So
no, I understand, but it's, the issue is also the quantity. So what we want to do is just give you some feedback on sort of how if there's a preliminary thoughts about them from some of the board members, we can get you in a direction. The Redemption sign, there's not actually a door there, is there?
yes, there is. That
Oh,
goes
so that-
into the end of the vestibule. And the redemption machine, right now, they're out front where the pickup lockers are. So they are coming inside, so you are in weather protection and more organized. So
Okay.
that gets you directly into that area.
Okay. All right, I'd take some comments from the board. One issue is for the board to consider is that we have treated some of the, like, for instance, the painted sign, which is not illuminated. It's as sort of an architectural graphic, which is what we did with the rooster on Sudbury. So I'd be curious what the board's thoughts are on that approach to this. or if it's so distinctively a sign that we would treat it as a sign. So, Chad, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think overall I like the R as a graphic element, although it seems much bigger than it needs to be. The one on the side over by the Redemption seems kind of unnecessary to me. You know, when you look at it in the elevation, you can see it filling the brick area, but if you look at the aerial plan that I think is page 11 in the PDF, that other building that is right on the corner by the train tracks in Chestnut Street is really going to cut off that angle, except for the most part for cars that are in that kind of triangular part of the parking area, in which case they already know that they're at Roach Brothers. The sign itself, I think, you know, the logo is consistent with what they've done in other places, and you know, that's all well and good. But again, it seems like it could be about 3/4 the size that it is in that limestone field. So I think my sense is I'm definitely open to the one on the front face of the building as a graphic element, but it just doesn't seem like it needs to be that big. And the Roach Brothers, the red R and the lettering, you know, 30 inches high for the R is definitely on the large side. The fire department is going to want the building address somewhere. So whether or not the street address 377 Chestnut Street is part of that lettering, or whether the 377 is in lettering on the door or something else, it is something that the fire department will be looking for. So maybe reducing it a little bit in size and adding the street number might help. And then the Redemption, you know, probably should match the letter height, but I could see that coming down a little bit too. Some buildings have their entire street, their sign has, you know, what is it, 14-inch high lettering. So I think just in terms of scale, it is quite big.
Okay, thanks. Len?
No additional comments from me. I agree with everything that's been said.
Okay, Susan?
No additional comments either.
Okay, Bob?
There we go.
Bob, you're talking.
Yep, I unmuted. Thanks. A couple things I'll just pick up on what Chad had started. The main sign with the red R and the black Roach Brothers on the white background, I think could be smaller as well, just to give a little more negative space. It looks like the red R is really jammed up against the top line there. And I think it will still be big enough if it was reduced in size a little. It's clear otherwise. The big logo R on the far right, I think that works well to break up the large brick wall. The other black stenciled logo R on the Redemption side, I think is too big or could be eliminated. I think the people who will see it will already be in the parking lot. That one seems that they could live without, or at the very least make it smaller, because that is a smaller part of the lot. You're not seeing it while you're driving. And then I'm curious about the Redemption and I guess Redemption, that means go here to redeem your cans. I don't get the idea of Chestnut Street without the number on it. There's not a lot of businesses that just put their street name out there. And I'm wondering if either are even needed. Could Redemption go below over the doors where you go in to redeem? And or, you know, obviously the fire department should have some say in the address and street number, and I'm not sure how that would resolve. It works well, certainly, if they're both there and the same size and shape and height and color for some symmetry around the corner. But I've just, when I first looked at it, I was like, Redemption is a sort of a directional sign. Chestnut Street, you know, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So
If I might comment on that,
Yeah.
I'll give you a response to that.
Thanks.
Giving you a little bit of the big picture, there is an intention on the next project, which is Sudbury Farms, to go into a Roach Brothers there. And this would be Roach Brothers Chestnut Street. That would be Roach Brothers Highland Ave. That clarifies that was not intended as an address, but a secondary identity to the location.
Okay.
As far as the street numbering, we've always done that in the glass, either in the transom above the door or in the door itself.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Deborah?
Really the same comment. I mean, I was gonna say that there are just too many signs and that Chestnut Street should go. I like the big R on the right side. I think it's the kind of thing you don't really want two of. I think, so I would tend to get rid of the second one. And despite your explanation just now, I'd also take the Chestnut Street and the Redemption and put them down on the glass above the doors. And just focus on the Roach Brothers sign, and the big R would be plenty.
Okay. So I guess that's kind of some feedback for you. I would agree. I don't have, I understand your branding approach on the locations, so
If,
Chestnut Street and the Redemption will work together, but I think they could be a little smaller. And I think you've heard several comments about maybe just reduce that the illuminated sign slightly, so there's a little more negative space as it gets to the edge of the panels.
On
and-
that, are we referring to the text of Roach Brothers or just the logo itself above?
Well, I think
the
you just
restaurant?
want to take that box you've drawn and squeeze it down a little bit.
A little bit more.
So the letters would shrink a little, the box shrinks a little. And just the whole thing's just, and that'll give you a little bit more negative space around it, the sides and the top. And you're welcome to apply for the, I think given the sense that the board's not sure of the second graphic on the Redemption side of the building, I would apply for them as signs as well, so we can discuss them if you want them, or you can, you've heard our comments, you can think about whether you want to apply for it or not. So
The way I understand your process and what I had done is an application for each of the 5 signs.
Yeah.
So if we go for the special permit under the same pretense and we do the 5 signs in the separate, we could probably get approval if we had to delete one, let's say.
well, we would review them one at a time. We might have,
Yeah.
we might approve 2 and reject 3. We might approve 5 and
That,
yeah.
okay, that was my question.
it's not the
Something
package, it's each sign.
that is desirable by Roach Brothers, but yet not really stall the wheel if we had to.
No, it'll be individual.
Yeah, okay, good.
and there would be a separate, an additional hearing, I'm assuming on that.
Yes, there is another hearing, but you're a
Okay.
long way from putting signs on this building, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
So you can-
I did just want to comment on the changing with the Chestnut Street lettering there. As of when we built both of those, well, the Sudbury Farms, there was actually a we weren't allowed to use Roach Brothers for that store because of a percentage rent deal. That's sort of gone away between the 2 landlords, as it were. So what we're anticipating there is that with the 2 Roach Brothers in town, just trying to, it can lend to some confusion, as it were. And so we can explain that a little bit more in the sign hearing, certainly.
Yeah, no, I think we got the point, and I think there's some support for that, having to deal with that. So
Great,
you should at least apply for it.
certainly.
Okay, so I think that concludes our comments about it. So we look forward to seeing progress on the building, and you can come back at some point for the special permits on the signage.
Great.
I will forward to you the photometrics. I'll forward you the landscaping plan.
Okay,
In fact, I could submit the full civil package if you.
I'd rather not, actually.
All right, so I'll just submit those 2 sheets to you.
Yeah.
And you'll submit your comments to ZBA, which I go to Thursday night. So.
Yep.
they can react to your comments there.
Exactly.
And
They're
we do have
the,
the approval on the
yeah.
facade, so that takes us one step closer there.
yeah, they're the enforcement agent. We simply offer our opinions on issues. And they weigh them with you in more detail.
Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks very much for your comments. Much appreciated.
Thank you, James and
Good
Chuck.
night.
Okay. 557 Highland Ave. I'll let you, Robert, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Mark. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Robert Schlager, principal from the Bullfinch Companies. With us this evening is the project architect, Eric Wayant from Stantec, who's probably falling asleep since he's up at 5 a.m.
Come on.
At 5 a.m. every morning. Our landscape designer, Eric Joseph from Paul Finger Associates, and of course, our esteemed counselors, both Mark Diorio, our general counsel, and Tim Sullivan from Golston and Stores. And of course, Eric's associate, Tom Ertz, who's been working on the project quite diligently, I might add, since we began with our first presentation to you probably 4 or 5 months ago now. So nothing has really changed of a material nature. What has changed is what I would describe as facade revisions, and Eric's going to walk you through those facade revisions this evening. Part of the revisions stemmed from a setback that the planning board asked us to look at and push the building back from Gould Street. Although we were compliant with zoning previously, we've been asked to improve that compliance and use a curb set line instead of a roadway set line. In addition, we've talked about some banners on the garage, which we'd like to share with you and clip in some corners. So with that said, and without further undue delay, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Wayant to begin the presentation.
Thanks, Robert. Everybody can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay. So again, my name is Eric Wyatt, design principal at Stantec Architecture in Boston, formerly known as Ad Inc. Eric Joseph is landscape architect, and he'll walk through some of the site plan updates. As Robert mentioned, we have made some modifications, some updates to the scheme since you last saw it in May, so about 4 months ago. We think the design has really improved quite a bit since you last all saw it. And so what I'd like to do is very quickly, I presume everybody had a chance to at least flip through the PDF that we sent. So I'll go quick. The way we set up this presentation was a little bit of a before and after, just to remind you what you had seen back in May and then what had kind of been updated. And really the key takeaway is that these updates are really the result of meeting with your group, meeting with the community approximately 10 times, the planning board 3 times, numerous town meetings with the police department, fire department, town arborist, building department. So we've got a lot of feedback over the months, and we've made some real progress. As Robert mentioned, one of the main things was updating the line that generates the setback for the massing. So previously we had used the site property line, which is this dark, black dash dot line. We have since, based on the road widening of Gould Street, moved that line to the curb edge. So that curb line now starts the 50 and 200 foot setback, which stipulates where the massing can occur on the project. So this is the site plan that we last presented to you all back in May. Just as a reminder, the building was broken down really into 3 components. The north building here at the top, which was a 5-story structure, the south building running parallel to Highland Ave, which is a 3-story structure, and then a connecting atrium that kind of knits its way through the site, which was 2 stories. The site entrance is organized off of a new intersection, a new traffic light at the entry where Wingate occurs. Traffic comes in, and then there's a freestanding garage at the northern end of the site. And there's also an entry and exit onto TV Place. We also have 1 story of below grade parking underneath the footprint of the building. So the biggest change really is kind of the tweaking of the massing. Along Highland Ave, we have angled back the south building. So in a similar kind of manner to the north building, approximately 1/3 of the frontage along Highland Ave has now been pulled off of the corner of Highland and Gould. We get a little bit more open space at this corner. We're treating this bump out as kind of a 1-story retail pavilion, approximately 10,000 square feet. And then you may recall we had this kind of jogging fitness trail that makes its way all the way around the perimeter of the site. We've now kind of coordinated that with the fire department. They're also using that for emergency access. And then we've also included what we're calling kind of a public amenity piece along Gould Street. So there's a series of pickleball courts, there's an open lawn space, pergola shade structure, some flexible lawn space, along with a handful of surface lot spaces that may be used for retail. It's kind of TBD what those spaces actually will be used for. We have made updates to the landscape screening. Eric Joseph, if you want to jump in, I know we've increased the
Sure.
amount of landscaping and the variety. If you want to just give a quick highlight overview of that.
Sure. I mean, the real quick highlight on that is that we increased the density of plantings, especially along the perimeter, to soften some of the building, provide some additional screening. And one of the adjustments that we made to the fitness pathway along Highland Avenue is actually pull it away from Highland Avenue to increase the planting buffer between there, just to create a sense of separate space. The other additional site improvements is also along Gould Street. We took what was previously just an 8-foot wide walk. We actually now widen that to 18 feet wide for multi-use along Gould Street in the retail area, and then across also West Drive. And then we also are committed to doing raised crosswalks. Just again, all this to provide greater pedestrian safety.
Thanks, Eric. So again, I'll just do a very quick before and after based on what you last saw. So this was the previous scheme back in May with the kind of straight bar along Highland Ave, and now the updated aerial rendering. This is floating above Gould Street where the massing pulls back, steps down to a one-story expression for that retail pavilion, south-facing outdoor seating, water feature. We think this will be a really nice place to hang out. And then based on some of the setback issues relative to the road widening, we've also now pushed back the 5-story expression of the north building here and then terraced down to a 3-story expression as it kind of softens and makes its way towards Gould Street. So we're trying to break down the massing for both the north and the south building. The garage for the most part has stayed the same in its massing. There was a little bit of a corner that was kind of notched out to comply with the 200-foot setback, which is the line that dictates where the massing should occur. Now a view over Highland Ave, the before and the after. Again, we think this is really a nice improvement to the kind of corner relief. And, you know, as people come in and out of town along Highland, having the view corridor kind of open up as you get towards that intersection at Gould. This is the view now floating on the 128 side. Not too many changes really visible in this view from what you had seen previously. You know, again, we're still having this jogging fitness trail that makes its way around the perimeter of the site. You have a detention pond with an overlook bridge. We have added some articulation to some of the architectural pilasters in front of the structural columns for the precast garage. You'll see that in a second. Again, kind of an entry view. The 2-story atrium really is the front door to the entire project. So all people will kind of enter in through this space and make their way into either the north or the south building. At the time we saw you all, we had loading located on this edge. We have since removed that loading, pushed it around the corner onto a service drive. So this is a much more active use. There's cafe space along this edge. The building steps back. There's a little bit of a landscape kind of pocket park. And then you can start to see that massing from the 5-story down to the 3-story. Again, a view, pedestrian level view from Gould, kind of before and after. We can start to see the massing step back. The pickleball courts, the flexible lawn space. You know, this is a little bit of a placeholder for some kind of type of shade structure. Really just a place for both the neighborhood and people that occupy the building to come out and use that space. One of the comments that your group had was to consider the coloration of the mechanical rooftop screen. We had previously shown it as a dark charcoal gray. We've lightened that to a kind of softer dove gray color, which we think is a nice improvement in terms of the materiality. And then when we saw you last, we also talked about the approach to the facade. So we are attempting to do a GFRC facade in a panelized manner. This shows an example of what that means. It's basically the facade and the windows all can be erected onto the building as one component, one piece. The scheme that we were looking at previously, or still currently are actually, is a formed GFRC. So they build a mold and they pour the concrete into that to get the texture that you want. We're also looking into different manufacturers that make more of a kind of a sheet product. This is also a GFRC material. This material is called Tactile. They still have a variety of really interesting textures that you can get across the facade. This is a precedent image of a lab building, a 5-story building on Binney Street in Cambridge, if you're familiar with that part of town. So you can see the kind of variety that you can get from that product. So we're, depending on the manufacturer, we're still looking at the specifics of, the details of how that gets executed, but really trying to stay in kind of a warm, earth-toned material palette. This is another example. This is a product called Rider. It's called Fiber C. It comes in a variety of kind of light, medium, and heavy sandblast, light, medium, heavy. So you get a little bit of almost like a hardwood floor texture across the facade where you start to get some variation. And they too have patterns and textures that you can cast into the panel. So we think we're headed in the right direction in terms of the materiality, and it's really now kind of about working through the details and understanding where some of these products come from and supply chain issues and all of the exciting stuff that comes along with building a building in 2022, 23. Lastly, this is just a blow up of the garage facade, as I alluded to before. All of the architectural pilasters, it's hard to see in this image, but now have kind of a 3-dimensional quality. You can see the precedent image on the left where the panels have some real depth to them to create a little bit more interest, a little bit more texture and shadow. And then we're carrying across the open bays of the garage, a concept that we've executed in Cambridge that worked out pretty well. In that case, we were using kind of local flora and fauna to inspire the kind of graphic design across these fabric banners. Here we have kind of a little bit of a placeholder, but we're thinking something that's a little bit more about the sky and the clouds. And then it sits within a frame that has kind of a cornice expression similar to what you see in the top right. So apologies for going quick. I hope that wasn't too quick, and happy to take any comments and questions.
All right, no, thank you. That was the interesting changes, and we appreciate you sort of considering our comments in as you went forward. So Bob, would you want to start, or you want to wait a minute?
No, I'll jump in. Hi, Eric. Good to see you again. Thanks for the
Likewise.
presentation. Definitely an improvement. You've obviously been working hard with all of the constituents.
I wouldn't go that far, Bob. Don't give too much credit.
And thanks to the shout out to Ad Inc., by the way.
Hey, I was going to give a Roger
inside.
Williams shout out too, but
Oh, even better. Back to the garage. How much of it will have some kind of screening? Maybe not the cloth or the metallic or something, but I think I made this comment before, and I'll make it again. There is a large garage down in the Needham Business Center, I believe right behind the Bullfinch building.
yeah.
And you can see those lights from a long ways away. I know when I drive back into Needham coming up 128 at that hill, I can see it. So I'm concerned about light, in the garages for safety. Obviously, that'll be required, but how will that spill out, or how might that be mitigated?
All
So-
right, I'll take it, Eric.
Okay,
So it's a very good point, Bob, and I see it from our building at 251st.
Yeah.
What happened there was they mounted the fixtures on the bottom of the trusses. So it's concrete trusses, and the double T's where they link together are about 18 inches deeper. With respect to us, the way we do things are, we mount them in the center of the trusses so you don't see them. They're shielded by 18 inches of concrete. It kind of looks like a joist, except it's not a wood joist that you'd see in a home. It's a concrete joist. The second item we do is that all lights are on a motion sensor that is a watt stopper energy system, because this is a green lead building, would be required to do that. So the lights would have 5% dimming, 0% dimming, 15%, 20%, all the way up to 100. If there's no motion, then every fixture remains off. As soon as motion picks up, other than the 24-hour emergency fixtures, which you won't see, then the fixture comes to full light. So that's how it works. Lastly, from 128, as you can see the banners, and Eric, do you have a blow up of CDP's garage there
Just on that
that you can
last
get your
press
hands
image.
on pretty quick? Nothing like copying and pasting in the architecture
Hey,
business,
it's
Bob.
a good
right?
idea.
So when Ad Inc. was in its Ad Inc. era, Larry Grossman, former principal, had come up with a banner. And the purpose of the banner was to architecturally accentuate the garage and the fauna and flora that you see in Needham, it's gray clouds, subject obviously to planning board input. But here, this conceals, so you can't visibly see anything inside. So it looks like the fauna and flora of a live tree. And now that the building is fully grown up, it just fades in with the landscape. The landscape, the building's probably 10, 12 years old now. It disappears totally. So in answer to your question, there will not be any lights that will be emanating from this garage, certainly not from the Route 128 side.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Susan, do you want to talk a little bit about the landscape to the, like, that's a good image to review. I mean, sort of I mean, it's a pretty extensively done, and we did, I think one of our comments was that the landscaping was kind of on the perimeter and there was less against the building. And I see from the more detailed planting plan, which I blew up, that you've really modified that. I think that's a big improvement, but I'd like to hear Susan's thoughts on the site landscaping.
So thank you, everybody. I thought this was, based on our last meeting's comments, this was really a lovely landscape and speaks to all the things that I love. There's native species and lots of things that speak to birds and wildlife. I hope they come. So I thought it was really lovely. I just have a few comments about, or maybe concerns, could be that I'm not familiar, but I was wondering about, although I think it's a lovely tree and I know it's a good street tree, I was wondering about the use of the pin oak along the street and sort of around the pedestrian paths, because they are a low branching tree, so it is sort of a maintenance headache to always be limbing them up. I don't know if you were using them for low branch screening in certain areas, but it seems like in some areas where it's close to the walkway, it could be a headache to kind of maintain the lower branching. And also they drop a lot of acorns, and if you're running or riding a bike, that would cause a lot of sort of somebody to clean up, or it could potentially be dangerous if you're walking on acorns. So that was my one comment about the trees.
Sure, and it's a great point. So, and thank you for bringing that. It's one of the trees that we were looking at.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh, me? Hear me now, or?
Yes.
Okay. No, I was saying that was a great point, and we're looking at using more of a columnar variety. And it was actually something that was in talking with the town hall culturalist, that he was actually concerned about using one particular species. And so we were along the perimeters because he doesn't want a monoculture. And so this was actually one of the trees that he was actually suggesting that we actually use as more of accent features. So we wanted to obviously, agree to what he would like to see. So that's.
I think I would just interject that one of our initial designs had called out London plane trees.
Right.
and a continuous species around the entire perimeter, because we like the look of continuity and consistency. And when we met with the forest and park ranger from the town, he was pretty insistent on a Dutch elm disease or a Delphi that attacks hemlocks. And he had experience in that vein, and suggested that we rotate and alternate the species as Eric had outlined. We did raise the concern on the pin oaks for the acorns. We have them at another project in Cambridge on Acorn Park Drive, no pun intended. And that is a problem, because the bikers complain and the pedestrians complain. But we'd be happy to go back to I forget the gentleman's name. It was a very nice guy, but he kind of wanted us to look at multiple species, and we compromised on we would lump and group. He wanted us to alternate every other tree, and I didn't particularly like that appearance wise. So we can go back to him again and see if he would
Sure.
other substitutions other than the pin oak that does drop acorns and does require extensive pruning and trimming, since part of our maintenance agreement with the town that we would be responsible from curb to curb. It'll be easier on us and less costly if we could go with a species that doesn't trigger the need for annual trimming and pruning and cleaning, if you will.
Right, okay. I love the no mow lawn areas. I think that's nice. I did have one other comment. I think I mentioned last time, I love the pickleball areas. This time I'm just noticing that none of your renderings show the fence that goes around the courts, and I'm assuming there is a fence, otherwise the balls would be traveling into the parking lots and streets. And so I think it might be important as to what the fence is going to look like.
Sure, and we can provide a detail on that.
Okay,
But vinyl coated chain link.
black or,
If black is fine, if some people like green, that's fine too, whatever your preference is. Eventually, by the time it's planted with whether it be wisteria or English ivy or some type of material, you don't see it, it fades away. If you folks have a preference for green, that's fine. There's two color choices, green or black, so you tell us what you like.
okay.
So, sorry to interrupt. Your plan to use it as a planting support?
Correct.
Screen? Okay.
Correct.
I mean, the real purpose is, as Susan pointed out, to prevent balls from running to Gould Street. But generally, as it's planted, the vines grow up on it and it disappears. You don't see it. Green is probably a better choice of color, since the wisteria is green, and if it's not wisteria, English ivy or something vinca, something that grows up and stays green all year round.
Oh, yeah. But wisteria requires constant pruning, and ivy is invasive, so maybe something else.
Suggestion?
Didn't you create
Clematis or something.
I was thinking, yeah.
What?
No, I was going to say clematis. We can look at doing that, some of that.
Yeah, some things that are easy just to cut down and
Yep.
aren't going to take over everything. I thought the meadow area was very pretty, and I didn't carefully look at the plant combinations, but I did want to warn that these are often really, the intention is really good, but sometimes it's not. They tend to look messy if you don't plant them properly, and you start getting a lot of complaints from people that because they don't understand what it is, they think it's just a bunch of weeds. So
Understand. And it
yeah.
really is a combination of some switchgrass, Indian grass, then we got some aster, milkweed, and so
Right.
it is a good combination. And we actually tried to limit that to just really the right-hand side or the 128 side of the pathway, with the other side actually having more ground cover, a little bit more formalized. So we just wanted to give it a little bit of an appearance of more naturalized buffer along the
Yeah.
128 side.
Oh, that's good. Those were my sort of standout comments. I just wanted to say I was really excited to see it, and I love the green roof. I love all the native plants. I love the philosophy behind the whole thing, and I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Deborah.
I don't have any other comments to add.
Okay. Chad?
I noticed the Fitwell and the well building standard logos at the bottom. And so one of the things I'm just thinking about is, especially at the pickleball area and community open space, is making sure that there's some convenient bike parking right over there. So if people are coming other than by car, that there's it's very easy to get there and use the spaces. The other one I'm kind of curious about is the big retail area and plaza that you're creating. Despite the Fitwell and the well building standard, we are still a pretty car centric culture. And so if other than the occupants of proposed building south, if there were people of the general public who wanted to use that area, it's pretty remote if they're coming by car. So, I mean, would they have access to the below grade parking in that area, or how would you enliven that so that it doesn't become kind of a dead retail area?
Sure. So great point. The first response is that the primary purpose of the retail is ancillary as amenity space for the office complex. So we're hoping to attract a family-oriented restaurant that can be profitable, sustaining both the office complex Monday through Friday from lunches 11 to 2, catering service to the office folks, as well as in the mornings serving pancakes, French toast, etc. to families, especially on weekends. And then in the afternoons, providing some type of cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, appetizers at 4, 5, 6 o'clock at night before people head home. Not looking for a liquor license, not looking to keep the facility open till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night and promote traffic on the town's roads for people that have had too much to drink and that kind of stuff. The type of tenants that we're going to try to attract are tenants that are complementary to office. A dry cleaner, a tailor, a shoe cobbler, tenants that are dependent upon the office users, maybe some form of a podiatrist, a dentist, as my wife says, the type of person that assists you, a esthetician, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, something that can help attract men and women to take advantage of services that are offered there. We're not overly optimistic, given the location of this development, that we'll be able to successfully attract a multitude of retailers, but we are hoping to make it as successful as possible. With respect to parking, the underground parking garage under this particular building, which is a one-level garage, connects between the north building and the south building. Eric or Tom, who's ever running the cursor, can show you how you drive in, and that is open parking. So anyone can pull under, they can charge their vehicle with if they're an EV vehicle, which I'm told by 2035, at least one family member in every household will drive an EV vehicle. They'll be able to plug in downstairs, take an elevator up, and that'll drop them either to the office portion of the complex or to the retail portion of the complex. In addition, there's about 25 spaces or so out front at grade, adjacent to the pickleball courts. And while we certainly have the capability with crosswalks to have people walk from the parking area to the retail, we don't envision someone's going to come to this site exclusively during regular business hours to support the retail. Maybe we're wrong. We hope we're wrong, but we don't see it as a large retail traffic generator. It's about 9,200 square feet plus or minus. So out of 10,000 square feet, I don't see it as a very busy retail intersection.
Yeah, no, I was kind of thinking the same. And so, you know, the plaza in a lot of ways is really like, you know, setting the hardscape and softscape stage for the building more so than maybe being an active use.
Right,
Given the distance there.
Maybe we're lucky enough to get a, you know, a JP Licks yogurt or TCBY or, you know, an ice cream store.
Right.
Or summertime, the kids after baseball or sports activities will come in. But I think other than a family type of style restaurant, a beauty salon, a barber shop, and, you know, shoe cobbler or that type of support amenity retail, I don't see anything major going there.
So it's really, yeah, to follow up on Chad's comments, really going to be a different kind of open space than the rest of the thing for the most part. That's your intent?
Correct, yes. If an office worker wants to go down and have lunch, they'll sit outside in the park area. Maybe it's 10 o'clock and somebody wants in the morning, maybe they want to, you know, get a cup of coffee and sit outside and use a computer. It'll be Wi-Fi connected, so they'll be able to connect to Wi-Fi. Again, we have no tenant for the building as of yet. Certainly aren't talking to anyone, haven't even begun marketing yet. So it's to be determined as to what type of actual users we'll want to locate there.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else, Chad, at this point?
Jumping back over to the garage, in the renderings, it looked almost like a kind of a faux wood type color. Could you just talk a little bit more? And I think if memory serves, I came in very late to the first presentation, so I'm going to miss some things before, but the precedent images all look like they were kind of lighter in color, and the parking garage, and yeah, here in particular, it had a much more wood-like appearance.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to go a little bit warmer than what we did in Cambridge. This is a little bit more of a kind of ivory, off-white. So we were trying to get it a little bit warmer. What you're seeing here is this is a structural precast garage. So as Robert mentioned, there's structural members, and the structural precast member includes the horizontals. All of the verticals are architectural precast, which are veneered in front of. So what looks like this vertical texture, that's a little bit of a placeholder. That'll probably be a little bit more of a simple, you know, sandblast finish. Maybe there's some vertical reveals just to add a little bit of texture, but it probably won't have this level of variety that you see on the rendering for the horizontal members. But elsewhere we were, like I said, trying to warm it up, bring it into a little bit closer of coloration with the actual building, which is a little bit warmer, so that they felt a little bit, you know, more like cousins or brother and sister, as opposed to, you know, just friends.
As opposed to the one Bob was talking about on the other side of the highway.
Right.
Yeah, no,
that's what happens when you don't have a building designed by Stantec Architecture.
Hey.
And you go with another architect.
Okay. Anything else, Chad?
No, I understood it to be, you know, some as yet undetermined combination of like a tactile or the precast, but given the way it was rendered, I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Lynn?
Nothing on my end. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I've followed this development. I actually did probably the very first study for the Economic Development Office when they just had numbers about what could possibly change here in this neighborhood and further down Gould Street. And I always thought your first approach, which had the building kind of filling in the corner and running that curve, was a good suburban community development type of solution to that. That the space just kind of bleeds away. And when Natasha Espada, who's now on the planning board, was hired to do a more detailed study. She did the same thing, so it was interesting that I was just wondering what, I have no problem with what the changes you've made. I do think that I would still personally like to see the building a little closer to that corner, a little more massing there, but I understand what you're doing. I know there probably was a ton of pressure from the people who didn't like that idea. And
Yeah.
you chose to respond to it. And that's your option, but I was
think
always a supporter of that idea, just so you know.
Yeah, thank you. That's reassuring. I think if you did look at the site, and the geometry of the site is so challenging, it's kind of almost a no-brainer to start with the Highland frontage and build off of it. But yes, we have tried to respond, and I think it is certainly moving in the right direction and responsive, and I think will function well as well.
One of the other challenges, Mark, that I think people may have overlooked is that the site slopes about 30 feet.
Right.
So from Gould Street to the west, all the way east from, I call it front to back. So from Wingate Nursing Home down to the 128 off ramp, you're over 30 feet. I think it's 39 feet, almost 40 feet. When you're in the center of the drive lane, it's 30 odd feet at the edge of the property line. And that's quite a slope. So the garage, the reason why you see it here looking a little bit less than the adjacent building, the 5-story building, it's really only going to show about 3 stories above grade as you drive down Gould Street, and as you come up off the ramp, it's kind of buried in that hill. And if you apply all of the setbacks, it's actually very simple to realize this is the only place where a building could go, and this is the only place the garage could go. So from a creativity basis, I wish we could take credit for it, but it really was dictated by the rezoning and how it was laid out by the architectural planner at the time.
Yeah, and I do appreciate, I think the garage looks much improved as well as sort of it was a rather simple precast and the banners in kind of the middle of the openings. And I think that you've done some nice development on that to make that a little bit more interesting. It is a large visible structure. So I think I like the improvements there. I think you've done well.
I should also add, Eric, we forgot to mention that on the 3-story building, which is parallel to Highland Ave, we are going to introduce a balcony and a deck off of the glass wall between the precast punch and the curtain wall. So a couple of members of the planning board had suggested to make it look more lively. So by introducing some outdoor space there, we thought it would be good for both our tenants as well as to make it look more user-friendly as you drive down Highland Avenue, which is probably moot anyway, because in about 3 to 5 years, all of the trees will be up to the 30 feet, because they're street trees, they'll be up 30, 40 feet high. You won't see the building, but at least we ran through the imaginations of trying to do the right thing.
Okay. I think the other members covered. I think Bob was the one who pointed out the dark screen made it just seem larger. I think he has a good point. I don't know how you feel, but it feels like it sort of, as you look up to the sky, you had a little bit of a gray sky in there, and I thought that sort of balanced out and showed his point nicely. So I think the changes are fine. Again, I think the corners might be more open than I would like to see it, but I understand that it's certainly your option to do it this way. So,
Mark, if I can jump in with one more comment, just based on what you said. Yeah, the screen is an improvement, so good job there. But back to this corner issue, if not building massing there, maybe it's an opportunity for some bigger, more mature trees that give some presence to that spot, because the way it's rendered now, it does seem like there's just a lot of open square footage. And I think, providing some taller trees right along that edge there with right in this zone right here.
Yeah, good comment, Bob.
Yeah, just an idea, you know, some kind of, and
Sure.
it's physical, it
Yeah.
could be lens, determined in some kind of geometric form to match some of those circles, etc. But just something, and also, you know, that's a busy intersection. You know, it's nice to go out and have a cup of coffee there, but that's a busy intersection. And I think the landscape can do a couple of things there. It can provide an object and kind of a filtration barrier. So that's one quick thought I had after your comment, Mark. Thanks.
Yeah.
Feedback.
I think you guys were a little bit more to the point. I was kind of beating around the bush a little bit, but I tend to agree. And, you know, it may be that, you know, given the fitness path and other things, and depending on, you know, if the retail was a bit more fitness oriented and that was like an outdoor exercise area, you might want a little bit more screening from the intersection so people didn't feel like they were right on display. But I could definitely see kind of organized events, you know, like, you know, yoga or a morning fitness, or, you know, even taking exercise bikes outside when the weather's on, that there could be a bunch of different things that generate energy and action for the building occupants, and really kind of tie in with the overall general fitness theme of the trails and other things.
It's a great idea.
No, that's great. And just a quick note on that corner. And we actually did have more mature trees there and plantings. One of the things we were coordinating with is the fire access, which actually goes right out and to the left. You'll see 4 bollards. If you come down the pathway, come down some more, and that come down the other way around the water feature.
Sorry.
There you
Oh,
go.
those
Yep.
bollards right there.
Right
Yeah.
there. So that's why we had to open that area up just a little bit more, just so we can allow fire access to go on right onto the Gold Street. But we can definitely look at adding more trees and you know, and density of
Instead of
plantings
yeah.
on the other side.
Great, thank you.
Can I make one more comment based on that corner?
Of course.
I think, I don't know how many people here play pickleball, but it is the fastest growing sport in America. And there's 4 new pickleball courts down the street on Gould, and you've added 2 pickleball courts. And I can totally see pickleball people walking over to whatever juice bar or ice cream store or family restaurant is there and sit down and hang out and, you know, do something in that spot. So I think it might be busier than people imagine.
Okay,
So we hope.
that sounds great.
Brian? Yeah, I know I'm never supposed to ask a question that I don't have the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I'm looking for some guidance. Any suggestion or thoughts on the paving materials along the fitness path? So the path is designed to accommodate H20 loading, which means a fire truck is a heavyweight loading. So our original thought was to go with perforated permeable, I'm having dyslexia today, I think, permeable asphalt. And then we thought we would line the asphalt with permeable pavers and then plant grass between the pavers. And then a light bulb went off in my head and said, how does somebody jog on a permeable paver? So then we went back to asphalt, and the asphalt can be colored in different colors. We can color it gray, we can color it terracotta, and there's one other color, of course, black. Any thoughts from you folks? We thought maybe brick pavers would be a good surface, and then someone mentioned to me, well, pavers over time aren't exactly the most level surface to jog on or to walk on. Any thoughts from your end?
Can I speak? My
Yeah.
turn?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of permeable sort of gravel type solutions that have binders with them that you might be wondering, how do you plow it and how does it hold up in the weather and all of that kind of stuff. And I think Gravel Lock is one product that has been very successful over in Central Park for joggers and their running path. And I think it's been in there now for 15 or 17 years. It's very easy to fix, unlike asphalt. If it does get pulled up in some way. It's easy to run on, it comes in lots of different colors, it's easy to pour. And Gravel-Lock is just the one that I remember, but there are many more now. They came out. I think Celtec is the product that you mix with gravel, but
It is, yep. We actually did it on a project with the DCNR Division of Parks and Recreation for the city of Boston. So that's an excellent choice. The thought process was recently that we would go with Gravel-Lock on the center. The pathway, I think, is 20 feet in width. So we would have roughly 10 feet of Gravel-Lock in the center and then 5 feet on either side with pavers. So the joggers would be focused to the center where it was a smooth gravel. We'd have the 20-foot width for the fire truck, and then other users could either walk, ride bicycles, or pull baby carriages on the perforated paver side, or choose to go in the center to the Gravel-Lock side.
nice. I just came back from Berlin where they have bicycle and pedestrian separated, and they were using, not that you'd want to do this, but cobble. I guess you could use a paver and then something more like a brushed concrete or something, some way that you could figure out one is for one kind of circulation and the other is for something different.
That's not a bad idea either. We could do the Gravel-Lock in the center, go with
And compost.
permeable pavers on one shoulder, and go with concrete Bowmanite on another shoulder, which would, basically give 3 different colors: one for the baby carriages and the walkers, one for the bicyclists, and then one for the joggers.
Nice. Well,
Sorry.
I'm glad the way you
No,
guys are
cool.
thinking.
All right, so we will, again, but Robert, it looked very good. We appreciate you coming back and having all this information for us. It's very helpful. We'll get on. When is your next visit to the planning board?
October 3, Mark,
Okay,
2
so
weeks.
we'll make sure to get a memo to them on our comments on this review. But overall, I think you can tell we have some concerns about the corner, but other than that, I think it came out very well. So we appreciate your work and your taking your time with us. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank
Thank
you
you.
all for your time and suggestions this evening. Very, very helpful.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Nice seeing everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so the last item is to review the minutes of 3 meetings. June 27th, 2022. Any comments or revisions to those?
Barring no comments, I move we accept the minutes of June 27th as submitted.
So Bob and I were the only ones there, so we should be the only, so I will second.
All right, thank you, Mark. So I'm going to vote in favor.
And I will vote in favor. So those are adopted. You get to the next one.
I was not at the next one.
Looks like I was acting chairman, so.
That was Chad, so. But
Yeah,
everybody
very
else
good.
was there, so that's good. Bob and I weren't there.
Yeah.
So, but I would take a motion to, any questions or comments on those minutes?
No,
Thanks for doing those, Chad. So I would take a motion to approve minutes of July 25th.
second.
So moved.
All right, and the vote. Confused me here. Who was there? Oh, it's everybody. So Len Karen,
Approve.
Chad Riley,
Approved.
Deborah Robinson, Susan Opton.
Approved.
Okay, so those minutes are approved. Thank you. And the last versions are the meeting of August 8th. Boy, we had a quiet summer. And
If
Chad,
there's
Bob, and
no,
I were the only ones that were there. So I'd take a
Right.
motion to approve the August 8th minutes.
right back at you, I move it.
Seconded.
All right, and we come to the vote. Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Chad Riley.
Yes.
And I approve. On that note, Rana is going to leave us at some point in the near future. So we're
Oh,
looking
dear.
for her replacement.
Was
So
it something we said?
I think she'll miss our comedy show, actually. So,
Yeah, she did laugh a lot. I don't know if it was at us or with us.
yeah, one of the others fine, but
Yeah.
so, but they're trying to find a replacement. So we'll break in. the
Elisa,
next
if you
person.
see her and we don't, please tell her thanks for all her work.
Thank you. I don't see her except for the way I see you guys.
Ah, all right, well.
She'll be
I'll send
around
her
for a
an
little while
we-
longer.
We'll send her an email.
Yeah.
She'll be around a little longer, but
Okay.
she is on the way out. I don't, we just have to find somebody. She offered to help us out till we got a replacement if she could wait that long.
So if
So-
you know of
What
anyone
does
who
she
would like,
do exactly? I don't remember.
what does she do?
Yeah.
She writes she takes the minutes of the
Oh,
meetings
I see.
and does some
She
other.
compiles them. So if you know anyone who's interested in a little extra cash, the job is posted on the town website and we're looking for someone. And as you know, it's only really 2 evenings a month, except for the summers, it seems. And yeah,
Okay. All right, so I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion.
My dinner's ready, so I second that.
Okay,
Wow, you risked it. You went after the meeting.
all right.
I'm not the cook, so.
To come to the vote, Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Deborah,
Yes.
Chad.
Yes.
And I vote yes. So
And
thanks, everybody.
enjoy-
That was,
Yeah, thanks, Elisa, and enjoy your dinner, Susan.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you for putting up
Thanks,
with the
guys.
technical difficulties in the beginning.
Ah,
Oh,
that wasn't
okay.
bad.
Bye.
Good night, all.
all right, good night.
Oh, good night.
Night.